I just want everybody to know that your story matters. Our stories matter. If you think your story isn't enough for a book, believe me, it is. And if you have even the slightest desire to write a book, you can do it and you should do it.
This podcast encourages and empowers you to create your own unique real story, develop your own unique real statement, and discover your own unique real self. The power is yours. Good afternoon, Candice Davis. Previously, episode 973 of the 12-Minute Convos podcast. It's been just 3 years, 1 month, 26 days since we last recorded that conversation. Which means as well, you're a creature of habit because there are no minutes in there. Which means you booked this exact same time 3 years, 1 month ago. Wow, that's amazing. How are you doing, Candice? What's up?
I'm doing so great, Angel. Thank you so much for having me back on the podcast. I so appreciate it.
Yeah, it's definitely a pleasure. I treasure. So what's going on? Again, let me start the way I started when I started the call. Your voice is amazing. When we last spoke, I thought to myself, and I did express it, that you should do a podcast. Please tell me how things have evolved.
That is so kind of you. So excitingly, I'm actually launching my podcast on February 1st of this year. So
Yeah.
just a few days away. It's called Nothing But the Words, and I'm really just teaching people how to write a book if they want to write one.
Oh, that's
Because,
amazing.
not everyone can afford to hire a coach or has that in their budget. So my podcast will be there to give them that information.
Well done.
And 3 years it goes by fast, Angel, very
It
fast.
does, it does. But, this could have gone another way. Like, I could have said, hey, you should do a podcast or you should do something with audio because your voice is amazing. And of course, your voice is backed by the actions that you've taken. Now, that was back then, right? So please tell
Yeah.
us what's going on. There were your daughters, right? They seem to be
Yeah.
super intelligent. How are they going?
They are so fantastic. So my younger daughter is graduating from college this year. She will have her BFA in ballet, and so she will be auditioning with professional companies all around the world to find a job as a dancer. My older daughter has finished medical school since we last talked, and she's doing her residency in internal medicine and psychiatry. But that is not the most exciting part. The most exciting part is that she had a baby last year.
Wow,
So
you're
I
a
am a grandma.
granny. Wow,
Yes.
congratulations. That's
Thank
great.
you. It is the best thing pretty much ever. We were so lucky. My husband and I were able to take off work and go from Atlanta to New Orleans, where she lives, and spend about a month there with her. And I was there in the room when my granddaughter came into the world. So
Mm,
the most amazing experience ever.
yeah.
Yeah, it
Wow.
changes you.
I'm hearing that. I had someone on a couple episodes, and her name is Terry Green. She said it's one thing when you have grand, it's another when you have great grand. And she says
Oh,
it really opens you up to so much in life. So that's
wow.
extremely wonderful. Congratulations on that. So you've continued with a business where you're helping people with the writing. You've ghostwritten a few stuff, right? And in the
Yeah.
midst of it, you've continued that. Is that accurate?
That is so true. So since we've talked, I've written some of those are ghostwriting jobs, so they're confidential, and I can't really say that I wrote them. But some of them, I'm actually the co-writer, so I'm credited on the book. And so I've written some business books and some personal development books with my clients. They're all super smart people with great stories to share. And I've also been coaching a lot of people. I created a program for people who don't want me to write their books; they want to write their own books,
Mm.
but they need some help. They need some help getting through the process. So I'm coaching people, particularly people who have a story they want to tell or knowledge they want to share. I think everybody has a story that they could tell, but people who are excited about writing a book, I want to help them capture it on the page.
I'm becoming so fascinated by voice. I strapped myself into a room and I'm having conversations with people from just all types of people. And I do not use video, and it has helped me to focus on the voice.
Mm,
And you said something about the power of a person's voice and their story and how
yeah.
unique it is. In the midst of everything, like you're helping others with their story, and I can understand that, which I think could make it a bit more challenging, which is the concept of defining your voice, the one that
Yes.
is responsible for directing your trajectory. How do you discern that?
I was really fortunate in that I spent many years writing for myself before I ever wrote for anyone else. So for me, writing is a process of telling stories, but when you put your ideas and your thoughts and your philosophies and your plans on paper, you start to define and refine them in ways that you really can't do when they're just in your head or when you're just talking to people about them. When you see them on paper, it's a whole different thing. And fortunately, I had a career of writing for myself before I started writing for other people. And I still spend a lot of time doing my own writing. I write a lot of articles. I'll have a book coming out late this year. So I do keep a focus on what I want to say. And even when I'm ghostwriting books, I am really just capturing that person on the page. I am totally focused in on making sure it's their story, their ideas, and their voice, and I can do the same thing for myself. So it's just a skill that you learn with practice over time.
Is that a skill that comes from the innate motherly love, or was it something that you developed? And I'm asking this because, it's like, which is first? Is it the chicken or the egg?
Yeah. Yeah, I think because, well, one, my parents really instilled a love of words and reading to me. I know I said this on your podcast before that my dad tucked us in every night and read us a bedtime story. My mom had people reading to us from a young age. So they instilled a really a deep love of words for me. And then I was a middle child and my sister was 10 years younger than me. So there was always sort of a nurturing, caretaking role. I always call her my first baby because 10 years is a pretty large gap, right?
Mm.
So I did take care of her a lot. There was that nurturing role started early in my life and helping other people have their say. I don't know if it's an innate talent, but it's something that was developed in me from a very, very early age.
I think it's such of a caring thing to be able to want to take the story of another person that's mangled and
Yeah.
communicate it in a way that's understandable to the masses, because it means that you're becoming a filter, if you would, for
Yeah.
someone. Does it feel like that sometimes?
It also feels like I'm like the champion for that person too,
Mm.
because I find a lot of people, even though they may see parts of their story as being significant, it takes a while for them to recognize how truly deeply their story can affect other people or their knowledge can help other people. So a lot of people come to me with an idea that maybe they want to write a memoir or they want to write a sort of a hybrid how-to book memoir, but they don't realize how impactful their stories really are. In that moment, when I see it click with them is always a great moment for me. Sometimes it's not until they publish the book and they're at a book launch party and people are saying to them, "Hey, I've already read this and this is how it's impacted my life." That to me is a great moment. It's allows me to really be the champion for that person until they can recognize the value of their story for themselves.
I still believe it's insightful to a very high level, though, that you're able to do that, because everyone's not going to hear that mangled story the way you do. And I
Yeah.
think that's an extreme talent that requires listening and writing, which is huge. But you've honed on that spirit, like that ability to focus, and it's just fascinating. My apologies if I sound like a fan, but it's just fascinating what you're doing. I'm telling you.
I think it's also just natural curiosity too, right? I'm very fascinated by other people's lives and the challenges they've overcome, how they've created success in different areas of their lives, even when it looked like they couldn't. So
Hmm.
part of it for me is just natural curiosity and interest in how other people live and succeed in their lives.
Writing connects us to the beginning and the ending of something. In the midst of it, the conversation of death, is that something that comes across when you're working with someone? Is it even in the forefront of your mind that you could die today or tomorrow?
Well, for me, it's always in the forefront of my mind. I just kind of always have been raised to believe tomorrow's not promised to any of us. And sometimes I'm pushing my clients because I don't want them to get to a point where they could have told their story. They got distracted or they became afraid and didn't tell it. And then they leave this planet without leaving that legacy behind in writing that they really wanted to leave.
Mm.
So, yeah, it is definitely, it's always there. It's kind of many people, yes, they want to write their book so they can grow their business or teach people something, but they also want to leave a legacy. They want a book that will last well beyond their lives
Mm.
so that people will have something of them after they're gone. So it's definitely relevant to us.
I guess that's where the name for the podcast came, right? Nothing but words.
Nothing but the words. Nothing
Hmm.
but the words. That's what when we leave this earth, we leave behind the impressions we've left on other people, and a lot of that will come from our words.
The entrepreneurial side of you must be one that is good. Well, great, I would say. In the word writing industry, it's a big industry.
Yeah.
And to continue doing what you're doing must have taken a lot. How does your husband, how
Oh.
is he influenced by what you've decided to do and how you do what you do?
Well, I will say this, he is my biggest supporter, and I could not do any of this without him. He is a screenwriter and filmmaker, and he will jump in and edit video for me. He's actually editing my podcast for me,
Hmm.
because he knows how to do that kind of audio editing and things like that. He is my biggest supporter, and I think seeing me step out and do things, I'm a very introverted person and also naturally shy, and seeing me step out and do things like talk to you on your wonderful podcast and going to conferences, and I started speaking a couple of years ago and speaking on bigger and bigger stages. For him, it does inspire him to try some things that maybe might have seemed like they would take too much of a leap of faith, but now he's able to try them. But I will say, if anything, the influence really goes the other way. I could not do any of what I've done without him. In fact, he got me my first ghostwriting client. So I owe
Wow.
him a deep debt of gratitude.
Hmm. I can tell you it is a grand opportunity that I have to call and to find out that you've not given up. As well as that, I did see that podcasting and that you're doing it. There's just a tiny bitty. Of course, that's a little, wow, you saw something that was really there. And I'm sure your podcast is going to be great. So I do wish you all the best with that. Again, nothing but the words in her accent, the way she said it, right? Nothing but the words, right?
It's better
But
in your accent, Angel.
but again, it's great. What's really cool as well is you've learned something and you're consistently looking at a format in which it can benefit others. And of course, there's the entrepreneurship side that will bring back that return. Nevertheless, you could have said, hey, I'll keep this to myself. So thank you for your service to humanity. My friend, as you step into the podcasting sphere of that, in closing, you're welcome. In closing, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
I just want everybody to know that your story matters. Our stories matter. If you think your story isn't enough for a book, believe me, it is. And if you have even the slightest desire to write a book, you can do it and you should do it.
Candice Davis, folks. Again, a great pleasure, one I treasure. Thank you for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. This podcast is produced by Pod Edits. Visit podedits.com for professional podcast publishing.